Okay. Good afternoon. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. My name is Amanda Nelson. I am with the Office of Aging and Disability Services. Today, I'm joined by my colleagues from DHHS, Maine Healthcare Association, and Maine's Long-Term Care Ombudsman Program, as well as our speakers. And those three entities have joined forces to support nursing facilities through quality improvement initiatives known as QuEST, Quality, Excellence, Staffing, and Teamwork. As part of the new nursing facility reimbursement system, nursing facilities have an opportunity to earn a share of an $8.1 million quality bonus pool award each year for 3 years through a new value-based payment program made possible through the Nursing Facility Transition Fund. In 2025, payment is based upon participation with quality improvement initiatives rather than on performance on the selected measures. Today's QuEST call does count towards your facility's 2025 participation requirements. In case you missed it or need more information, feel free to email odes.nifquality@maine.gov. And Chelsea will drop that email into the chat a couple times today too, for anybody who doesn't have that. It is great to see so many faces on our call today. Again, to ensure that you get credit for your attendance, we ask that you turn your camera on and add your name and the facility you represent into the chat. This is especially important if you are a designated quality champion. This meeting is being recorded. The recording, as well as the slides and other materials, will be posted to our Rate Reform website and will also be distributed to QuEST members via email. If you're not already receiving those QuEST updates, again, just send an email to that inbox and we'll make sure that you get added. You may also send a message if you would like a copy of today's chat or the attendance log. Our goal is to share information, but just as importantly is to hear from you, our local experts, on some of the best practices that you're implementing. So first up today, we'll hear from our national and state experts, Carmen Bowen and Jake Anderson, and then we'll make sure to leave 20 minutes or so at the end to hear from you on the subject. What's working, ideas to overcome hurdles, other questions you have. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our presenters for today. Excuse me. Carmen Bowman is an author, consultant, and owner of Educatoring, catering education for compliance and culture change, as well as a self-proclaimed regulator turned educator. She's a former Colorado state surveyor, as well as a federal surveyor, a CMS policy analyst, and faculty for the basic surveyor course. Carmen has worked closely with CMS, the Pioneer Network, Action Pact, the Eden Alternative, just to name a few, and has authored and edited several books and workbooks on varying elements of culture change. She also hosts a monthly call, Conversations of Culture Change with Carmen. And as a contractor to CMS, Carmen was actually the co-developer of the Artifacts of Culture Change, the original version 2.0 and the assisted living versions. After Carmen, we'll have Jake Anderson. Jake is an administrator for a 138-bed nursing home in Augusta, Maine. Jake has been nationally recognized for his work in standardizing clinical process to reduce rehospitalization and improve resident and patient outcomes. Most recently, Jake participated in the design, planning, and implementation of the new small house model Maine Veterans Home in Augusta, where moving in took place just in March of 2022. Before becoming an administrator, Jake began his career as an occupational therapist and later a director of rehab services. So thank you very much to our speakers for joining. And with that, I will turn it over to Carmen.
Great. Hey, congratulations, Maine. This is very exciting. It's my honor to just educate you even more about the Artifacts tool that you're hearing about. I'm curious how many of you knew about the Artifacts tool, which originally came out in 2006. It'd be fun to hear in the chat box, perhaps. I knew about it. However, you know, a lot of people have not known about it. So I just want you to hear this, that it actually was funded by CMS Central Office, the federal government. Can you believe that? And I was very fortunate to be a subcontractor And so I was a co-developer in 2006 for that original version. And I want to show you why we called it the artifacts tool. My colleague, Karen Schieneman, who worked at CMS for most of her career, it was her idea to kind of tap into the thought that if a culture has gone before us, what do? We eagerly search for proof of it, and we carefully brush the sand away to find the artifacts. And if you've interacted with this tool at all, you'll see that they are like tangible things that you can go see or go ask someone, do they really not wake you up here? So it's policy and practice changes as well as some environmental changes that reflect home more than institution. And so then we got a grant. So it's also funded again by CMS and also the state of Maryland, a grant in 2021 to do this 2.0 version. And we're very proud of it. I think it's tighter and more inclusive, and the scoring makes more sense. So it used to be a random scoring method, but now it's a tally. So we ask you to complete the tool and decide as a community if that practice is fully implemented throughout the building for all people who live there as well, or maybe it's partially implemented in part of the building for part of the people who live or work there actually. And then the third column is this is not a practice, and I like to say yet. We hope it will become one. So this is a self-assessment tool. You get to fill it out. We hope it's an educational tool because maybe you haven't heard of all these practices. We also hope it gets you excited and becomes an inspirational tool. And I suggest that people consider completing it again as a community and then choosing some of the practices you want to implement and then perhaps completing it again. That's what I've done with teams that I work with. And then you see some improvements in this data as well as other data, which I'm going to mention a home that I worked with here coming up. So then as we're creating the 2.0 version, we realized we need one for assisted living. And the good news is it's practically the same. We only dropped 2 practices that were much more nursing home than assisted living, and we changed a little bit of language to reflect assisted living as well. They're both available at thepioneernetwork.net. And I just love saying, everybody, let's keep the living in assisted living and the home in nursing home. Those are powerful words, and you should be proud of them. When you say assisted living facility, you kind of nixed the power of assisted living. And even when we say nursing facility, we kind of ignore the fact that this is some people's home. They actually live there. And that's powerful language. We've learned in our movement that language has power and language drives culture. So this tool, another way to think of it is it's a way to hold yourself accountable. Unless you're with the Eden alternative or maybe the greenhouse model, you probably don't have other forces holding you accountable to change culture. This tool could do that for you. And I also want you to know that ever since the culture change movement began, it's always shown that it's synonymous to regulatory compliance. In 1987, when the Nursing Home Reform Act came out, some of the big wins were quality of life, choice, dignity, respect. And guess what changing institutional culture is all about? So we built the movement upon federal regs. And so the regs have actually been good and supportive since 87, and they've only become more so because CMS has learned about culture change, and we now have a lot more support in the regs than we ever did before, in particular with the new version in 2016. In the tool, we actually reference 27 regs 52 times. And now that I've interacted with the 2.0 version more myself, we could have quoted more regs. I wish we had. And I want to show you something here, everybody. CMS made person-centered care popular in 2016, but look at this. Have you ever studied this definition? Watch this. Person-centered care, what is that? It means to focus on the person or the resident as the locus of control and support the person in making their own choices and having control over their daily lives. That's interesting to me. To me, that's more than care. How about you? The locus of control, making choices, having control. And so to me, that's actually a definition of more than care. And I want to show you what happens next. So first of all, the language of person-centered care was outdated when CMS made it popular. We were already using something else. I'll show you. And even though person-centered care sounds good, there's actually something better. And have any of you realized this yourself? Person-directed is stronger than person-centered. Person-centered is good. By all means, it better be that. But person-directed is even better, even when you have dementia. And so I want to ask you, what's missing when we say person-centered care, medical care, clinical care, care plan, care center? What's missing? Anybody see it? Life and living is missing. Think about this too, everybody. I didn't do a slide on this, but independent, what's it called? Independent living. And then you need more assistance. And what's it called? Assisted what? Assisted living. And then you need care. And what's it called? Long-term care or nursing facility. Where did the living go? So I just want to be a voice to encourage you all to actually talk more about the life that people are living than the care that they're receiving or the care that you are giving. And so we had a leader in our movement say, guys, what we really mean is self-directed. And so we started to call it self-directed living and self-directed life. You could certainly say resident-directed life or living. I personally have glommed on now mostly to person-directed life and person-directed living. And I'd love to ask you all, what do you think would happen if we did talk more about life and living than just the care that people are receiving? Good care should also be a given, don't you think? Like, why do we talk so much about care? What if that was so well streamlined, we could talk more about the life that someone is living? A colleague of mine makes this point. Let's say we have a perfect care plan. What's the point? What's the point of all that care? She makes the point that it should be the life someone wants to live every day with that good care supporting them. I just love that. So guess what the first section of the artifacts tool is called? Resident Directed Life. I wanted to lead up to that. There are 5 sections, and I'm going to share with you just some examples of each section. So the first one is what we call open dining. That ideally you might have open dining times between about 2 hours. That's kind of just where we've landed. And people can come and go when they choose. This is supported by regulation. And just think of the choice. And I don't have time to go into all this, everybody, but the outcomes are amazing. This is a way to begin to honor sleep. Sleep is important. It's a way to relax the rush hour. We hurry, 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 get everyone in the dining room at the same time. Can you serve everyone at the same time anyway? No. So why do we do it that way? That's a very institutional way. It doesn't really serve anyone's purpose. Another practice is supporting natural awakening, recognizing sleep is the healthiest thing you can give to anyone. What do you got to do when you don't feel good? We sleep. And yet in a nursing home, we're kind of known for waking people up throughout the night, waking them up in the morning. You don't have to. And it is supported by reg. I love teaching that you can tiptoe in, sleeping, tiptoe back out. They're still sleeping. Why would you wake them? Residents are awakened only per their preference and individualized need, not according to some generic practice like turn and reposition every 2 hours or etc. on a generic schedule. So we're making a point here that it should be individualized, not generic. And that really frees you and your team up to truly identify what a person needs and doesn't need and how to get better at honoring sleep. Personalized MedPass is another practice. It's supported by regs. In fact, here's an example. Look at that. There is support at pharmacy services, drug regimen review, and med errors for individualized MedPass. And we missed it. That should be listed in the tool. So meds are delivered according to each resident's individual daily rhythms. And again, I'm going to tell you about a team that did that and their outcomes here in a minute. Another example is that people choose their own daily schedules and can make requests and changes daily as well. Resident schedule preferences are integrated into the team member schedules. Whoa, how wonderful is that? How would you feel if you lived there? What is your daily schedule? And it matches a famous quote from our movement. Wendy Lusbader is a pioneer of the Pioneer Network. She says, no longer are the needs of the institution going to come before the needs of the individual. Okay, next section is called being well known. Isn't that beautiful? I want to be well known if I live there. How about you? So each person's care plan is specific and reflects the person's goals. Did you know CMS regulations now have the residence goals all over the place? Do a search like I did, and it says the residence goals. It never used to say that before 2016. What an honor to ask people what their goals are. And yes, for everything. What are your goals for your diabetes? What are your goals for your quality of life? What are your goals for your incontinence? And yes, not everyone can answer. And I just challenge people to get as close as you can. If you care for someone daily, you know them and you know things that they would tell you if they could tell you with words. If I just spit out my green beans, what did I just tell you? Okay, another practice that's actually in a regulation is that each person's assessment process addresses the Eden alternative domains of well-being. Did you know the 7 domains of well-being are actually listed at tag 769? And then we've also included them here as a practice that your home, your team would actually find these things out about each person who lives there. What is your identity? What do you need for your connectedness? What does that mean to you? What does security mean to you? What do you need to feel safe here? What is meaning to you? What is important about your autonomy to you? And how do you want to continue to grow and develop while you live here in the nursing home at whatever age you're at? We don't talk about that too much, do we? And last but not least, how would you feel if someone asked you moving into a nursing home, what brings you joy? We want to know, and we want to make it happen if we can. So those are the 7 domains of well-being. I highly recommend learning them and bringing them, and it'll change everything for you. Next section, home, environment, and accommodation of needs and preferences. Notice it does not say home-like. That's an institutional word we're trying to get rid of. We want to create home in every way, and even in the language, it helps. So here's a couple that I picked. Institutional over-the-door call lights have been replaced with things like porch lights at the side of the room. So in my photo there, you can see a porch light. A home in Colorado did this many years ago. It's an old building. Those are cinder blocks behind the drywall, and the creative maintenance team just rewired the wiring. And when someone turns their call light on, it's a porch light. I think that's marvelous. How about you? Another practice are mailboxes. And then this home went above and beyond. You see the doorbell, you see the color of the door, and even some artwork on the, like an overhang there. Another easy one, I think, everybody, is if you still use overhead paging, that you would not. And you would just decide on how to get message to one another, how to get a hold of one another. What a wonderful day and age we live in to be able to do that, particularly through texting. Another fun one is residents and families have easy access to a washer or a dryer. In many small homes and household model homes, they do this. And I like to be a voice to tell all of you, you could do this. There's probably a corner somewhere where you could have a washer and a dryer. And it's just a neat thing. If a person's able, they can go do their own clothes. If families would rather stay there, wouldn't you rather them stay there than schlep all this dirty clothes home and clean clothes back? And while they're waiting on it, they could be living life with this person they love. I just love that one. The next section is called family and community. One example of an artifact here is a family council or a family group that meets routinely. And then similarly, I love this one. How about you? That you actively solicit the views of family members and treat them as care partners instead of visitors, and working together to accommodate the person's preferences. Now, personally, I'm I have trouble now. I told you I'm trying not to say care as much because life is more than just care. So we could just say treating them as partners and caring for this person or serving this person that they've known a lot longer than we have. And then our last section is called Leadership and Team Member Engagement. So here are my top picks for you. And to be honest, I kind of feel like maybe we should have put this one first. So let's look at 112. The home has a standing culture change task force or committee or team with broad representation of people who live there, residents, their family members, supervisory, direct care team members, various shifts, administration, and nursing leadership. Now let's go backwards. In addition to the committee, watch this. The leadership team have ongoing process to identify and remove barriers to culture change and resident-directed life within language, within policies, within job descriptions, and the biggest one of all, system changes. As well, the administrator or equivalent supports the culture change efforts, including convening teams, projects, and committees, and it's even in their job description. And then the third one, high-level leaders, CEO, owners, board members actively support this culture change philosophy, committee, projects, etc., providing commitment and resources and wanting updates, progress updates. That's beautiful, isn't it? So not only a committee, but the committee has a lot of support, a lot of what's the word, authority, and people want them to report out. I love that. That's the way to make change, everybody. That's in your power to do. And then just a few more fun ones. Ready? Team members wear clothes that support a home environment as opposed to scrubs or uniforms. Yep, yes, they do. Now, this one tends to rile feathers. So here's the way to not get feathers riled, everybody. And that is you just make it voluntary. And these are three friends that are nurse leaders that when I first met them, working with them monthly over several years, yes, they were wearing lab coats. Yes, they were on top of their scrubs, the nurse leaders. And they realized of all people, they could support this. And so I'm proud of that picture. A neat story at their home. A CNA loved this. So she kind of dressed cute every day, like something different, fashionable. You see, like people's personalities can come out in their clothing. And check this out. Even during the pandemic, a home in New York said that offering personal casual dress kept the morale up, they believe, during that hard time, and it broke up the monotony. Another great one, oh my gosh, great story here. So the artifact is that team members, we're trying not to say staff, team members, other than activities or recreation, regularly engage residents, either individually or by leading a group. It's not about groups. It should be about interests. So the maintenance manager saw a lot of men in this Wyoming nursing home sitting around doing nothing and not going to many of the groups. And he invited them to do projects with him, such as sand the picnic tables. And it was such a big hit. A wife came to see her husband here, and she said, "You have to do this more." He was glowing. That's her words. And you have to keep doing this. He hasn't glowed since he moved into the nursing home. Yeah, we need more glowing, don't we? And another fun one, love this one. I would do this in a minute. The home welcomes and encourages team members to dine with the people who live there. This is a home in 2003. I was a surveyor watching this, guys. And they did a Wednesday buffet. They brought the food out of the kitchen every Wednesday. Any team member working Wednesdays could eat for free, and they were asked to sit down and dine with the people who live there. It almost brought me to tears, guys, because think of all the dining rooms you've seen and how when you sit with someone, the same people 3 times a day, you kind of run out of things to talk about. So having 1 or 2 team members who work there sitting at each table, it was like noisy. It was the best noise ever. And notice that young woman holding the baby, the activity director at the time there, the smart administrator told her, "Please bring your baby to work with you every day until she's toddling around." And she did. And they have story after story about the gentleman who never talked except to the baby, you know? Isn't that awesome? And last but not least, I can't do any of this work without bringing up language, which I already did, but we made it a practice. The home uses non-institutional language in all documents like clinical charting, job descriptions, policies, procedures, as well as verbal interactions and periodic training to remove institutional language. So did you know language even comes up at tag 550 resident rights? It tells us to avoid the use of labels for people such as feeders and walkers. And, you know, I could do a whole webinar on language. So let's just think about all the labels for a minute. What are some labels you've heard? You could put them in the chat box, and I'm almost done, and it's Jake's turn in a minute here. But I've heard screamer, I've heard wetter, I've heard isolator, we've heard hoarder, wanderer. Even like the fall risk becomes a label, frequent faller. Did you know a frequent faller becomes the repeat offender? What are we doing, guys? This is not good language. The complainer. Did you know a complainer is actually a very brave person to try to tell you how things really are living there? I would look at them as an informant, not to make another label, but let them inform you. Don't let it be negative. You want to know what people think. The crier, naughty, oh my gosh, over involved, needy. No, 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 no. We need to get rid of all labels. No more labels. We don't need any better labels because we don't need any labels at all. The best label any of us have ever received is our name. And then you just describe what's happening with the person. Notice how the institution just harms us so much with language. You know, the get up list, you become the get ups, or on the put down list, you're the put downs. Oh my gosh, when we live there, we're going to be the put downs and the get ups. And then we'll be the dementia patients and the dementia residents. No, you see, we are people first. And that's Sally who has dementia. Those are the people who have dementia. I don't even say resident for this reason, guys. We are people and a person before we're a person who lives in a nursing home. And certainly not to refer to people by their room number. So I have a poll that Amanda's going to launch here. And my question for you all is this. Are you ready? Which would you rather live in, a home or a facility? And I'll refrain from voting, even though I want to.
We're
And
getting a few votes coming in. All right, it looks like it's slowing down. We're down to out of 113 out of 129 votes.
nice job, guys. That was quick. And the results are, drum roll, please. None of us really know. Hallelujah. That would be my vote and my guess. So watch this, everybody. Watch this. What's it called? How's it go? Someone tell me. There's no place like. Amanda, have you heard that? There's no place like.
I think I've heard that one.
What
Yeah,
is
I think
it?
it's
What is
there's no
it?
place like home.
Oh, look at that. You didn't say this word. Isn't that interesting? Try to say it, everybody. There's no place like facility. And then home sweet. What is it? To me, that seals the deal. I just can't say the word facility anymore, everybody, and you wouldn't have to either. You can refer to the nursing home, you can refer to this home, you can refer to the name of the place, and it is a nursing home. It's okay to say that. Now, my husband's a videographer. He made this for us. Watch this. I've come to realize, what if we all looked at that building more as a house where people live, their home more than our workplace? And watch what happens when you look at it that way. And last but not least, this home, Westward Heights in Wyoming, I got to work with them for 1 year with education and coaching. They stopped waking people up. They discovered exactly what people needed. Do you need awoken during the night or not? What are your incontinence needs? They went to the longer wear incontinence products. They did the open dining, but it actually became anytime. You can watch a video. We have a documentary. The dietitian says, we just make food for people when they need it. They live here. It's awesome. Personalized med pass to times of the person's choosing. They dove into decreasing as many meds as possible. They found out what each person needs for a good night's sleep, and the schedules really do revolve around the people who live there. Now watch this. In 1 year, guys, retention rate went up from 69% to 86% in 21, right out of COVID, the days of all the agencies. Get this, they didn't need bonuses anymore. They were begging people to come to work with the bonus. They didn't need it anymore. Same with overtime. They didn't need the overtime. Why? Because people who work in a culture that makes sense and serve the individuals who actually live there, they love it and they want to come to work. Instead of 4 CNAs at night, they only needed 3. And check this out. They were able to drop 5 med aid hours a day. Wow. And how about outcomes on the side of the people who live there? Pressure ulcers decreased, skin got better. I asked her why on the video. She says, I guess because they were sleeping. We heal when we sleep. Falls decreased, supplements decreased, and they had no weight loss for the first time in 7 years. And last but not least, no job openings. You could do that, Maine. I would love to just encourage you, maybe have a state push for the whole state to use the artifacts tool. Perhaps create a database somewhere in the government, Amanda. You could be the first state to collect it for the whole state. Maybe you could have like it's kind of like a 5-star, your own star for quality of life. Keep rebuilding the Maine Culture Change Coalition. I've helped the Colorado get started, the Wyoming get started. This is music to our ears to hear a coalition starting again. Please consider being a culture change advocate, every single one of you, no matter what your job is. And maybe you could be a leading state. And then just so you know, I have resources. I won't go through all of them, but if you like this stuff, I have a blog going to try to get this info out. We can actually use regs to reject and replace institution with home and normal life. I've written a resource called Guardians of Normal Life for all of you. Let's guard normal life. And each page is like an information sheet to share with your whole team. And I also just did a resource to hopefully help people to get to that individualized med pass per person. And then there's more on artifacts and other culture change resources. And I'm just going to say one last thing. There's stuff if I can be helpful. The last thing is it doesn't have to be so institutional. Jake, your turn. Thank you, guys.
I just want to say all of the great resources that Carmen had to go through very quickly on those slides. There's so much great stuff. Those are all going to come to you all through the slides. So don't sweat it if you miss them. And Jake, you're up. Thank you.
I'll make sure to cycle through my slides a little slower. But thank you, Carmen. My goal today is to talk to you all a little bit about Maine Veterans Homes Augusta's journey and the usage of the artifacts and our usage of culture change. We have a lot to talk about from our home's history dating back into the early 80s when we were first built. But my objectives in a very brief amount of time is to share who we are as an organization and as a home, understand how the artifacts fit into our world of quality, and share a little bit about my pessimism with the artifacts and how they were able to turn a clinically driven, professional and healthcare professional and administrator into a bit more of a well-rounded and holistic professional as well. And then I want to share again in a very brief time some of the initiatives that we had embarked on, through our journey. Now, as Carmen had mentioned, there are almost 140 different elements to the artifacts of culture change. And, it's not really my place or Carmen's to dive into each one. But the hope is really to kind of reintroduce, this idea of culture change and the impact that it can have, and whether they're big or small initiatives that you take on, the impacts that they have on the experiences had in your buildings and the outcomes that your homes create can certainly be pretty profound. So Maine Veterans Homes Augusta, I mentioned, formed in 1984. Maine Veterans Homes as an organization was formed by the legislature in 1977. We were the first of the Maine Veterans Homes. Every state has a state veterans home system. Maine is one of 2 states that has an independent, not-for-profit organization running their state veteran home system. Most are either run by the state themselves or run by the VA themselves. So Maine is in a lot of good ways unique, and certainly unique in this respect. We're, excuse me, a 150 bed multi-level nursing home. At that point in time, we offered skilled nursing, long-term care, secured memory care, and secured assisted living. We were the semi-private world that you all know and loathe sometimes. We failed, though, to not even have bathrooms in each of our resident rooms. Our resident rooms were conjoined by, I'll call it a powder room, but it was a small room with a toilet with sinks on the outside in the resident rooms. And it was designed after the medical model. Most nursing homes, are designed for efficiency, for infection control, and designed after our big brothers and big sisters as the hospitals. We were a teaching facility in the early and mid 80s, had an ongoing relationship with Dartmouth College, and have maintained over the years a strong presence and relationship with our community partners as a teaching facility in our area. But who were we really? We were just like you. We were trying to do exceptional things in a less than exceptional world. And even within that less than exceptional world, like you, we have been able to accomplish some pretty outstanding accolades and levels of care that, in all rights, we probably shouldn't be able to do in the semi-private, old style, old world that we find ourselves in sometimes. Now, in 2022, we did move to our new facility, our new home here in Augusta. We are a fully implemented small house model. We did shrink a little bit. We are a 138 bed home now with 12 houses ranging from 10 to 15 residents on our current campus. We still have our 4 different levels of care with transitional care or skilled rehab, long-term care, skilled memory care, and then our secured residential care as well. We are a fully private room home now. Each of our 12 houses are all private as well. Now, I do want to talk about who we were before our transition to our new model of care and our new home, as much as I want to talk about life in our new building. Our culture of quality was from 1984. It was not necessarily started in 2022. Our organization, our home, and the caregivers that were providing service had multiple quality awards in the traditional model of care. Best in class customer service, and had a strong, sustained quality program within our entire organization that included corporate and home-based dashboards, initiatives, and metrics, and ongoing oversight to support that. But one of the things that I noticed when I joined the organization was this underlying tone of culture change. And a little bit about myself, I am a clinician by trade. As Amanda had mentioned, I'm an occupational therapist. In my early career, worked closely with my team in my previous organization, standardizing communication with the local hospital systems to improve communication between nursing homes and emergency rooms. Work closely with our community partners with establishing the congestive heart failure protocol. So a very clinically based person was who I was as a clinician, and that then turned to a very clinically based administrator. And when I came to Maine Veterans Homes and our organization had a focus on all of those important metrics, culture change was still kind of that underlying tone that I always felt was kind of the orange in the apple cart. And it took some time for me to really recognize and embrace the impact of culture change on all of those all important metrics that I know we usually are focused on with some ideas like this: falls, customer service, DART scores, antipsychotic drug use, census in our world. And again, I always felt that that was where I was at my strongest. And the work that we had done, um, it also could be equally as impacted with identifying opportunities to change the culture in the home. And there have been a great number of buzzwords over the course of the last 10, 15, 20 years in healthcare. And culture change kind of fell into that, I feel like. And while there was kind of that feeling of it being a buzzword kind of reduces the impact or reduces the validity, over the course of our implementation of these different initiatives in utilizing the artifacts, many examples of how culture change initiatives have impacts on what traditionally falls on our quality dashboards and what are those quality metrics. Now, there was a time, 2020 BC, where we were an industry that was focused on quality. We were an industry that was focused on improving the experience of our staff and our residents. We were able to identify the warm and fuzzy, and that would be a priority for us. And during that time, again, before 2020 BC, that is when our team at May Veterans Homes Augusta began our preparation and our transition to the small house model. And what that meant for our team was really changing how we were going to embrace the idea of culture change, and specifically some of the elements of the artifacts into our daily life and the daily lives of our residents. And at that point in time, we were an industry that really had anything we wanted to do, we had the time to do it. There wasn't anything that was burning. Many of us were focused on and eagerly awaiting, what was going to be this year's nursing home week theme that was going to be announced by ACA. And all that changed for us. And when we finally hit 2020 and then thereafter, our world definitely changed. We are now a world that is driven by infection control and ever changing regulatory guidance. Yes, we find ourselves in the waning days of that pandemic. However, the impact of the last 5 years is pretty significant on our industry in a great deal of ways. We've now found extreme instability in our workforce, large amounts of turnover in leadership in long-term care, and new leaders now emerging to lead our homes and the industry. Organizations throughout our country and certainly within our state have had to make some really difficult decisions about what their future looks like, and then find a way to be committed to rekindling that passion and joy for an industry that is an extremely rewarding industry. And then we find ourselves trying to navigate this post-pandemic world. How do we bounce back? What does bounce back even look like? And it's a hard thing to reacclimate ourselves, but we need to take a step back as an industry and as leaders in our industry to identify what does that actually look like for many of us. If I became a leader in my respective role in long-term care or in healthcare in the last 5 years, I only know a COVID world. I only know a world where I am trying to find a new way to institute my contingency staffing plan, or a new way for us to reduce agency staffing, or a way to get anybody in here for staffing. I don't think anybody prior to COVID, or certainly during COVID or the pandemic, would have thought we would have been deploying our social workers to work in laundry, or working in laundry on a regular basis as ourselves as administrators. But that is the world we found ourselves in, which robbed us of really all of those warm and fuzzy and relationship building opportunities for our staff, our residents, and it's now an opportunity for us to revisit that. Now, a quick participant poll. What time of day would you wake up if you were not having to work, and what would you have for breakfast? Now, if you could put that in the chat for me, I would appreciate that. And as you do, I'll continue to talk a little bit about what we typically do in nursing homes. Now, a great deal of nursing homes have done a lot of work around breakfast, a lot of work around their meal service, and provide an outstanding service for the residents. But we do still have some traditional nursing homes that rush to get everybody up at 7:30. And if a resident doesn't want to get up, it's a meal that sits and waits for them and then is gently warmed in the microwave for them when they are ready for it, or we're able to get to them to get them out of bed and then get them to the dining room table. In our home, we have anywhere from 10 to 15 residents that live on a house. We could have residents getting up at any point in time during that time frame, during the breakfast time frame, anywhere from 5 a.m. until 10 o'clock. So it's an opportunity for us to take a step back and think about who we are as people today. It doesn't make me a different person when I enter a nursing home. But yet our practices, for efficiency's sake, take a lot of that away from our folks when they enter our worlds. Now, these are the artifacts of culture change domains, and Carmen had gone through and given some examples of each one of them as we go through. And historically, again, I have always struggled with kind of those feel good metrics in our industry, and having an opportunity to put antipsychotic drug reduction or falls in the same category as culture change. But if you're looking to have a positive impact on any of those clinical outcomes, any of the almost 140 elements of the artifacts can indirectly or directly have an impact on those outcomes. Now, a couple examples that I wanted to share, and again, with a pretty limited time frame, was individualized ADLs. Now, throughout the artifacts, you hear a lot about what time do we get people up in the morning, what time do we put them to bed, do we wake them up, do we not wake them up, all those sorts of things. In our home, we refer to them as the individualized ADLs. So they are based on the residents. It is nothing about me without me. It is making sure that our residents are having a say and are directing what care is being received. So are they a person who wants to wake up naturally? Are they a person who wants an alarm to go off at 6 o'clock in the morning? Are they a person that wants to eat breakfast before they get dressed? Are they a person who wants to get dressed after they eat breakfast? Are they a person who wants to go to bed at a certain time? Are they a person who stays up late? So it really involves all of that residence care.
Right, so get a new line. No.
And moving on to some of the other ones, resident and family listening sessions. We have our team members that meet with our residents and their families on a weekly basis, discussing as things like what activities they would like to see or do, what changes they would like to have to the menu for the following week, involving them in components of their world. Some of the other ones are a bit more staff centered, and I'll talk a little bit more about why that is here in just a minute. But we have weekly staff house meetings where the interdisciplinary team on each of our houses gets together, talks about operations on the house, talks about acuity changes to the house, talks about new staff members coming on board, really opening those lines of communication. And those meetings I'll talk a little bit more about here in just a second. Our revamped orientation. Orientation historically for us was a lot of time with our HR manager, a lot of time with our staff development coordinator, and maybe introductions with a few other key leadership members. And taking a step back and really finding a way for us to engage and connect with our team members. As the administrator, I spend about an hour and a half with our orientees during our orientation. And we have other key leadership members that, again, spend a good amount of time with them throughout our process to create a bit more of those connection opportunities for our new staff members as they join our team. Now, before I get into some of our workforce specific items, I just want to talk just briefly about what is an engaged workforce, and what does our workforce look like right now. To be honest, our workforce probably looks fragile, burnt out, stretched. Some of them look really, really, really young. And at every opportunity, we need to find ways to engage them and create some ownership with their role that they have with us and the value that they bring to our respective homes. And some of this data is not surprising. You know, if you think about an engaged workforce, they are more productive. They are going to show up to work more often. They are going to provide better customer service. And at the end of the day, they're probably going to be a better referral source for you as well. So finding ways and opportunities to engage your workforce and bring value and ownership to the roles that they have within your respective homes certainly is going to pay extensive dividends. Now, some of the strategies that we utilize to empower our workforce are to involve our key stakeholders and involvement in their respective worlds. Yes, I'm talking to you right now about our staff members and that impact. That also goes for our residents and their family members. You know, equally as important is involving those key stakeholders in their respective worlds. But for examples today, you know, talking about our workforce is not an easy thing. And finding ways to involve them in operations, creating a seat at the table when decisions have to be made that impact them, those are all ways. Excuse me as I get the lights back on. Those are all ways that our residents and our staff members will have better outcomes is by utilizing a more empowered or engaged workforce. Now, throughout our project, we found opportunities to do just that. We created mock rooms. We had furniture days, bringing equipment into the building to make sure our staff could test it, to make sure that it was going to be things that met their needs once we got over here to our new home. Those sorts of things, again, easy opportunities for us to engage our workforce in the world that they ultimately are going to be working in. Now, the small house meetings I had mentioned a minute ago are staff driven. You know, they are supported by our leadership team, but that is not a staff meeting that the director of nursing or the nurse manager or Jake, the administrator, shows up to and drives. It is a meeting that is driven by the staff that work on those respective houses. And the nursing staff is there, our care partners and the licensed staff members, the cooks that work on the house, the maintenance worker, the housekeepers. All of those folks are there and they discuss what's going on the house. Do we have a resident who is now on hospice and we're expecting a lot more family coming in for that individual? Did we have a change in the acuity of that house? And is the support that we need to be successful and provide the level of care we expect, has that changed, and do we need to get more assistance? So it gives the team members an opportunity to talk operationally about their world and then get support, you know, when it's needed. To piggyback on this embracing our empowered workforce, a collaborative democracy is the culture and the environment that we hope to create. Within that is our code of ethics. That code of ethics is unique to Maine Veterans Homes in Augusta, and it's nothing wild and crazy. It's things that you would typically see in a normal employee handbook. But as we were preparing for our project and our move, I challenged our team to identify what did we need to do or be to be successful. We were moving from one building to another building. We were abandoning some of what was familiar in practices in a number of different ways and opportunities throughout a lot of departments. And we were trying to do it in the throes of a pandemic. And a lot could have gone wrong and a lot could have failed. And it was put onto the team to create a code of ethics that was a commitment for ourselves to each other to find a way to be successful in this transition. And it was a culture document that really establishes what our culture of accountability is. And we say who we say we are. If we have opportunities to establish, you know, connections with our team members, we do that on a consistent basis. If we have opportunities to embrace our frontline approach to leadership and be participants in day-to-day life, that we're doing that on a regular basis. And that ability for us to establish those connections doesn't just show itself in the day-to-day operations and the day-to-day work. Our commitment as a home is to recognize our team members, not just as the person in the role that they are, but that they are individuals that bring a lot to our home and our organization in a number of ways. they are not just a housekeeper. They are not just a nurse. They are not just a CNA. They are people with passions and plans and, a personal life and family and those sorts of things. So establishing those connections that we care about who they are is an important piece. And that can show itself in a great number of ways, whether that is professional development through our CNA ladder for our CNAs, for professional development for somebody in one of our support departments that wants to become a CNA, even a craft fair. It seems kind of silly, but we've held multiple craft fairs at our home in the last year, and they're all either staff members or their family members who have passions for things outside of work. And again, we're establishing those connections and embracing who they are, again, making them feel like they are part of our organization and part of our home. And the last part of that, before I talk just briefly about some of our outcomes, is the idea of leading through modeling. And in our model of care, we have a unique ability to blur the lines of what is a traditional role. So, for example, in our home, everybody cooks breakfast, whether you're Jake, the administrator, or your housekeeper, or you're one of the care partners. It's one of the shared roles that we have throughout our home. And one of our examples of that leading through modeling is we had a housekeeper who, again, in a kind of a new world for them, was embracing this idea of being an empowered workforce and really doing whatever he can for his residents, and love the idea of cooking openly. A unique situation where he is now forward facing with residents, having to know diets and consistencies, and a world that he was really tiptoeing in. And so he picked one of our houses to work on, and every week he would do that same house so that he could get familiar with the residents, so that he can learn from the staff how they spoke to the residents and how they communicated to folks with advancing memory care issues. And it built his level of confidence that he was able to operate in that world with some efficiency. And one day he had one of the leadership team members go up, checking in to see if they could be helpful. And he had one resident in his kitchen, and he had made that resident an omelet, had some strawberries and some coffee. And that resident had had a change. That resident's cognition had begun to decline, and their dementia had taken a step. And the resident was struggling with attending to their meal. They were struggling with not getting up. They were trying to walk around the dining room. And the leadership team member sat down, engaged with that individual, talked to them a little bit about their day, asked them how the omelet was, cued them to take a few bites. The resident began engaging and eating their meal with cues. And that leadership team member then went to an adjacent house to check on that house to see how things were going. Well, they came back to find that housekeeper now seated next to the resident, cueing the resident, engaging them in conversation, asking them how the strawberries were, and engaging that resident to a point where they ate their entire meal. Now, this is where Jake, the administrator, then changed. That is a culture change. That is the artifacts of culture change. That is empowering your workforce. And that housekeeper, and just sitting down and having a conversation and working with the resident and the things that made that possible for them, ended up positively impacting those clinical outcomes that Jake, the administrator, held so dear. And it's one of those aha moments for myself and hopefully for others, that the sum of all the pieces will have a pretty profound impact. And it's not just one thing, it's a culmination of a great number of things that will eventually create outcomes and positive care for your folks. Now, I'm going to share, some of our outcomes. Since our occupancy in 22, we've had a 36% reduction in falls. We've reduced the antipsychotic drug usage in our home by 67%. Some of our workforce metrics, we have increased our total number of FTEs from 2019 through the pandemic by 100. We were able to decrease turnover rates, reduce our vacancy rates, and at multiple times we've had wait lists for multiple clinical positions. And I haven't said it yet, but it's something that I have to absolutely say. Within the artifacts of culture change, there are 5 different components. Less than a third of them have anything to do with your physical plant. So having private rooms or being in a new building or being in a nice building, they are a component, sure, but they are not by any means what makes up a successful home or a successful building. I have worked with some incredible professionals in our industry and have seen some outstanding and beautiful facilities that struggle with customer service or struggle with their clinical outcomes. I've also been in homes that are a little bit longer in the tooth and a little bit older, but are part of the fabric of their communities and have outstanding outcomes. And so it is not necessarily the makeup that makes everything beautiful. It's a part of the puzzle. By no means is it the entire puzzle. And as I claim to be a metrics person and numbers, and I look for that validation and those sorts of things, at the end of the day, this is who we're doing it for. Our world has yet changed again, and now from a world where our outcomes were publicly known, and the 5-star we have to try to figure out how to explain to Joe family member who now wants to be admitted to the facility or the home. It is a hard process to go through. But at the end of the day, this is why we do what we do. This is Gene. Gene is one of our was one of our residents, and the efforts in culture change, the efforts to have good quality outcomes, at the end of the day, are to have a positive impact on folks like Gene. What you see is Gene having a conversation with Ashley, who was the cook on Gene's house. Ashley had her meeting with her residents and talked about fall coming up and asked them if they had any changes or ideas that they would like to see as part of their menu for the fall. And Jean raised her hand and said, "Well, I was a homemaker for 60 years, and my daughter still has all of my recipes. And if you're willing, I would love to sit down with you and take a look at them and see if there's anything that you would like to add to our menu from my recipes." So what you see again is us having an opportunity to recognize who Jean is as a person. And just because she needs our help now, sometimes it's a lot of help, sometimes it's a little bit of help. It doesn't give us the right to find ways not to recognize who Jean is as a person. So for us, we are by no means perfect. I think if you look us up in the dictionary, in the unperfect part of the dictionary, that's where you might find the work that we do. It is a journey, and it is a commitment to constantly looking at ways that we're doing things. We battle every day to not take a step back into more of an institutional style of doing things, even as Carmen said, in the language that we use. And she voiced it as well, where she has tried to abandon certain phrases, at great challenge sometimes. The other part of that journey is continuing to communicate to your team members the successes that they have and the value that they bring and the impact that is, inevitable when you refocus on what can be, an outstanding journey and an outstanding industry. So I'll leave you with this. What can the artifacts be for your team? My hope is that you can see that they can be a tool, they can be a roadmap. If you have metrics that you don't know how to necessarily impact, take a look at the artifacts of culture change. There may be components in there that there may not be one switch to flip, but there may be a few things that will positively impact outcomes that your team has either struggled with or give you a starting point, as an organization as you move forward. So with that, I'll pause there just for a minute. My email is on the bottom if you guys have any questions or if there's anything that I can do personally to help you. And I'll turn it back to you, Amanda.
Thanks a lot, Jake. That was excellent. And thank you so much, Carmen. There's a lot to unpack here. I really appreciated both of your presentations. And I think the important thing to remember, right, is just the importance of starting somewhere. And I think that the artifacts give us a great jumping off point to get that ball rolling. So I'd like to open it up to discussion. You don't have to, you're welcome to put it in the chat, but if you're comfortable just coming off mute and speaking, I'm curious to hear kind of what some first impressions are of the conversation so far today. Come on, guys, it's only 100 of your closest colleagues. No pressure. Seeing some stuff in the chat. Great presentation, thank you. I think this type of change is possible and needed. It will look different in each community. That's a really great observation, Megan. And I think it's great to say that clearly, because every journey is a little bit different, right?
Amanda, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Mo.
Hey, it's Mo. I think one of the things that we've talked a lot about over the years, or thought a lot about that have been in the artifacts, is how to encourage that staff and resident interaction during meals. We've all talked about when you're sitting there with somebody who is eating, blah, blah, blah. Do you have any insight, or is there anybody from DLC who could help talk us through how we could possibly incorporate staff and resident dining together?
I wonder, Carmen, as a former surveyor, if you want to take that one. Oh, you're muted, Carmen.
Good catch. Good catch. Sure, would love to, guys. I want you to think about, oh my gosh, a memory just flooded my head. When I was a surveyor, there was a sign on the wall in the dining room. I wish I had a picture. It was before our cameras were in our phones. And it said, staff may not eat with residents in the dining room. And I cried. Do you see the problem, everybody? Shame on us. Eating together is normal. It is normal, normal, normal. And I thought, even as a surveyor, we trust them in the bathroom. We trust them in the shower. Why wouldn't we trust each other to eat around each other? So I want you to please apply normal life to this, okay? Is it okay? Yes. Now, what would not be okay? Well, if I lick my fingers and then I touch your bread, that is not okay, right? And it's as simple as that. Don't make it harder. Just expect good practice from everybody. Or if a person who lives there needs help and I don't give it, that could potentially probably be a problem. And that's about all I can really think of. Otherwise, it's normal. We know that people like it better. I have story after story that, get this, the people at the other table said to the manager, hey, if you're going to eat with them today, you better be eating with us tomorrow. It's like they were fighting over people, right? Because they want you guys. They don't get you. They don't get normal relationship with you. So I challenge everyone listening, go sit down and dine with tomorrow or later today if you're on the evening shift. And just start to make it normal, especially as managers do it, okay? And you'll role model to others. And then you take it from there, create some parameters if you need to, but we jump to all the rules, don't we? It's sad to me. Because of all the rules and the worry, we've forgotten what normal life looks like.
Yeah, one thing I'll add to that is, we timing wise struggled with having our staff members dine with our residents. We were in the throes of COVID when we were moving to the small house model, where having masks down around residents, that obviously great number of challenges there. It was one of the things that we chose not to because of the pandemic really embrace, but now are back at the table. As I mentioned, our journey continuing with now, how do we do that? In the small house model, it is not the staff members' lunch when they sit down and have their meal with the resident. They are still working. They are assessing. They are engaging. Those are all components of what, if I'm sitting down and supervising or assisting a resident with their meal, what I'm doing as a caregiver, what I'm doing as a staff member. So that is all work, and it is not necessarily the staff member's quote unquote lunch. I've also been at enough tables with residents when they are dining, and whether you're having a conversation with them or you're assisting them, they're asking you, are you going to eat anything? Are you going to have anything? And it doesn't mean that I have to have a 5-course meal in front of me. I can have an English muffin or a piece of toast or a cup of coffee, and you're able to meet that same thing with engaging them and presenting with the appearance that you're dining with them as well. There's a lot of different ways. There is not just one answer to all of these different questions or all of these different approaches. And that's what I would really push folks, is that find a way to make that answer to that question a yes instead of a no.
Hi, this is Tina from Borderview. I have a quick question. I guess it would be maybe for Jake more than anybody, but you said you have a multi-level kind of facility there in Augusta. How much of this culture change have you been able to implement with your memory care people?
It's a great question. So of the total bed count of my home, 138 beds, we have 40 beds that are secure memory care for long-term care, and 30 beds that are memory care beds for our residential care. So that's 70. And nationally, I think around 60% of folks in nursing homes have some sort of cognitive impairment. So the opportunity that you're dealing with somebody with memory care issues is almost a given, in our world. Again, kind of echoing what I said before, finding creative ways is the way you got to do things, especially if you're working in memory care. We have a number of our folks that can't communicate, but they have loved ones who can communicate, or we have things that we can do. So if we are assisting somebody who requires total assistance with their meal, and they have a face that says, I have 3 daughters. I can tell when my daughter doesn't like peas when I put peas in her mouth. It's taking those sorts of cues from our residents to build that resident-centered, program. And sometimes, again, you have to be super creative in finding those ways to do so. So I would say, yes, absolutely a challenge, but a challenge that you just have to find, those creative answers to sometimes.
Hello. Sorry, this is Teresa. I put in a question about regulations regarding eating meals together with the residents, and I'm looking at the state of Maine regulation under food service. And it's like 18K.11. It says employees and guests eating meals and snacks shall do so in an area separate from the food preparation, tray service, and dishwashing area. So I think this was where we have gotten stuck, because the tray service is coming out of the kitchenette, but it's happening kind of in our dining room as well. So like that's kind of how we interpreted tray services kind of in the dining room. So that's where we got stuck, and that's where we've been kind of back and forth about, is it okay to eat with our residents?
Hey, Teresa, can you read the reg again,
Yes.
please?
It's 18K.11, and it says employees and guests eating meals and snacks shall do so in an area separate from the food preparation, tray service, and dishwashing areas.
Okay, so your guests are not eating in the food prep area, right?
Right.
Or the dishwasher area, right?
Right. I think it's the word tray service. How do
So
we
now where is food going on the tray? Is it still in the food prep area?
Yeah, it's behind the counter.
Then I think you're good, but what does everybody else think?
I think we were thinking like where the trays were kind of being serviced and delivered, and that's kind of, but yeah, if everyone seems to be on the page that that's not how the regs being interpreted. We'd be so happy.
And there's nothing in the federal regs holding us back, so please don't let that hold you back.
I think that's a great question, Teresa. That's a really great point that you bring up. And yeah, you hear tray service and you're like, well, there's trays. We're passing food out. I think my guess is that's more like if you have a steam table, say, and that was tray service, like where they were building the tray, like, oh, she wants mashed potatoes rather than baked potato or whatever. I think it's more directed towards like dietary staff or whoever that it's not appropriate to be eating. It's a food prep area as opposed to where that's just my interpretation, my guess, as working in the field for a long time.
Yeah, and I think maybe we just have like residual pandemic mindset because things were so strict, and so it's like,
You do. You do.
yeah.
You
Thank
do.
you.
Good for you to address it, Teresa. It's wonderful.
We may end up having the surveyors say something to us about it. Somebody may end up getting a tag. I would encourage IDRs because I would think that the more those get IDR'd and argued, that maybe the surveyors will start to understand the culture change. And the trays going to a resident's room, I guess would make sense, but why are we doing trays in a dining room area? We should be just bringing the plates and putting the plates in front of them if we're talking about a home level care.
Yeah.
Am I off with that?
No,
Another good point.
we do both. Like, so from the kitchenette, the trays are going to the people who are requesting room service. And from the kitchenette, the people who are in the dining area are being served plates of food, not trays.
Good. Hey, you guys, you want to hear something crazy? I used to say this 25 years ago. It's time to say it again. Would you agree that when survey is in your building, you are probably going to get some deficiencies? Can I see nods one way or the other? Probably. Now, I'm sorry, that's just like statistically true, right? And so here's what I would tell people. Why don't you decide what is going to happen in this home where you happen to work? What do people want in this home where people live? And then you're following the regs as best as you see. You look at how you studied that, right? And then guess what? Are you still going to maybe get some deficiencies? And I had this one administrator years ago. He said, team, let's just go get some new deficiencies. And I kind of appreciated that, we live in such fear. A good faith effort goes a long way when you show people you've read that reg and you've thought it through, and this is where you landed, or you talk to someone, you talk to the this and the that and the her and the him, and your consultant and maybe even a surveyor, it carries weight. And then I love the IDR statement as well. Absolutely.
I will also say, this is Barbie Walker from First Atlantic. I will also say that I saw Bill Monteo's name on here earlier to see the first part of it. We should reach out to him and ask him directly.
That's right. You betcha. Maybe
Good
collect,
point.
collect questions, you guys, for surveyors and get them on.
Yeah, he was on here for the first part, so
Good.
that would be the person I'll reach out to.
You bet.
And I think the more this is about culture change, not just for our individual homes, right? It's for us too, right? It's our mindset. Our mindset is so much of what holds us back. So I mean, if we are moving forward as the state of Maine, we lead the way. We've always led the way.
Yes.
I think the last few years where we're not leading the way is an outlier. That's a fluke. And leading the way in culture change, that kind of changes the mindset of those around us too, right? So, and I agree certainly with Carmen of like, understand the reg, think it through, collaborate with your team. Personally, would I be trying dining with residents on the Tuesday when licensing arrived yesterday for my annual survey? Probably not. Like I wouldn't be experimenting on that day. But to bring it into part of your regular culture and kind of work your way through any of the issues, in a day-to-day, it's worth trying.
Barbie, would you share what Bill Monteo replies when you get an answer?
was gonna say, when I get an answer, I will. I do have his email. I do contact him. It's been a while since he changed his role. But it just caught my attention because I saw when I was doing my own head count for my buildings, is that I saw his name on here. I was gonna say hello to him privately, but I didn't get to it before he got off. So I have no problem with reaching out in regards to that. Because I had also put on here, because we do a captain's at this building, a captain's dinner in which all the leaders take a table, and we just did it last week. And we sat with 3 residents each
Oh,
and
that's awesome.
had bangers and mash, and I can't remember what the other meal was, fish and chips or
Sounds
something.
like something on the cruise, you know?
It was a cruise. The
Yeah.
cruise ship was up in the window. Yeah.
Oh, gotcha, gotcha.
Yeah. So it is doable as long as you follow the proper practices. I think that is the case. And as long as you can state your case to the if they blatantly disregard a practice, don't stand up feeding a patient. Don't,
Right.
and don't take their food barehanded.
Yep.
So come up with a practice that works for that. But I have to tell you, it's amazing to watch 40 patients have dinner in London.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a couple of questions. One, are we going to get the assessment tool that Carmen shared at the beginning? And 2, how has it looked in buildings where staff eat their own food with the residents because of so many different diets now and allergies? How does that play out when the residents are eating from the dining room or from our kitchen and staff maybe bring their own meal? Is anybody doing that?
Well, personally, I've seen it done. I
Yeah.
guess everybody, this is another fun memory. One time we had our surveyors at a culture change event, and they posed some questions, and the surveyors would flip up the sign. Ready? They would all flip up. It depends. So it depends, right? It depends on who's sitting at the table. It depends on what their sensitivities are, and it depends on what food is being brought to the table, right? So always just bring common sense to it, guys. Instead, we can't do everything blanket anymore. That hurts people and it's not individual. So, don't let it hold you back. Just figure out how to make it work.
Yeah, the only thing I would caution on having staff bringing their own food is that, again, it's not their lunch. Because if a resident needs something or they have to intervene, they are working, and they should not be off the clock, while they're sitting with residents, providing potentially care or service, during the mealtime. So just keeping that, in mind. You're right. We do have a lot of folks that have sensitivities, and if they are trying to embrace it, I applaud their effort to do it with the food that they are okay eating. Just want to be very clear with them what your intent is. I also had seen a question in the chat about overall kind of the surveyor's response to our model of care and the culture change. And all in all, they've been great. I haven't met a surveyor in my years, plenty that I would disagree with, but I haven't met a surveyor in my years that didn't have the best interest of the residents that we care for in their mind as well. So a lot of what we're doing and being creative to create a better experience for our residents and stabilize our staff. I don't know that there are many that would argue maybe how you do it. And to Barbie's point a few minutes ago, making sure that your T's are crossed and your I's are dotted with your infection control practices and all the other components to it. But at the end of the day, I think they would support your efforts.
Can I add something to what you just said, Jake? Believe it or not, the home that I showed a picture of, they were so committed to a person getting their break that they still got their break plus ate with. I guess that's kind of what you're saying too, isn't it? Yeah. But as managers, you can do what you want too, right? So I think there's something to be said about managers sitting and having their lunch with just people that have become their friends, I would also add another answer to a question, everybody. It's my understanding that sharing food with people who work there doesn't really end up costing you money. My understanding is a lot of times it's using up leftovers in a good way till they're gone. I've always heard that it really doesn't cost anything, and what a wonderful thing you could give to people potentially. Oh, I got another answer to a question right there, everyone. So the question is how to deal with, readily available infection control supplies. So you can all imagine a suction machine in your mind, right? In the corner of a dining room. Many years ago in Colorado Springs, the administrator asked the maintenance guy to build a cover, but the cover is on wheels. So it's a beautiful wooden cover that just whoop, slides away, and there's the suction machine. So it is readily available. There's no unlocking, there's nothing. It just, whoop. And I think that could be, an answer to other readily available healthcare supplies that are needed, maybe something like that.
Well, Jake, I think that the question, I'll put this to Jake. What happens when you have people on precautions and the signage and the carts that are in front of the doors to make it less institutional, but also to have them there? Because again, I think that's what they're referencing in that question there is, how do you make that look less, institutional? I mean, they have to be there, those supplies. Some of those signs have to be there. How do you combat that, if you would, Jake, if you could kind of talk about that?
Yeah, I think there's ways to do that. I think having them in bags sitting on an overbed table, probably the worst that we could do. We probably can get a little more creative than that. Is there a cheap Tupperware, little dresser that we could put stuff in? Is there the capacity to have it in the room versus out in the hallway? In organizations past, we used to have a little dresser, a little nightstand that would sit in the hallway with the respective infection control stuff on. This was pre-COVID and years ago, but I would just press you to think of, all right, we got to do something, and we don't have a choice. What's the best that we can do? And sometimes the best that you can do is somewhere in the middle. And in our world, somewhere in the middle is pretty darn good sometimes.
Yeah, I just to echo that, I think most of life these days, and especially the work that you all do, is a shade of gray, right? There's very little that's black and white anymore. And that requires critical thinking skills. Sometimes the best critical thinking, 9 times out of 10, happens with your team, because you all have different perspectives to share and different experiences. And don't let the fear of one potential maybe something let that crush your whole culture, for something that happens that 1 week out of the year. I want to be mindful of time. I want to commit to making sure that we finish on time, but there's a lot of rich conversation here, and I really appreciate all of you and your thoughtful conversation and open, right? With the way that the QuEST calls are set up, we only have a culture change call once every 3 months. I think there's certainly opportunity on a completely voluntary basis to have more than that. If you're interested, please drop your name. If you want to say something like, I commit, I want to be part of the regular Culture Change Coalition, you can also send it to the email, and we'll get a collection going, similar to how Mo did for the Dementia Care Partnership. Very, very similar initiatives here, but also unique, complementary. So we can get something going and do more brainstorming like this and get some answers to those questions in addition to presenting and collaborating.
I think just one last thought from me, Amanda. I mentioned it briefly in my presentation, and it's easy for us to get ahead of ourselves with, let's do this with dining and let's do this with infection control and doing all that kind of thing. Know who your team members are, I think is going to be an important piece. What experience do they have with instituting organizational change? A lot of folks in this call, I've known in the industry for a good number of years. There's a lot of folks on this call that may be brand new to leadership in our industry, and their bandwidth to manage the day-to-day and take big steps for your organizations or for your respectful homes may need some support. So know your teams, know what they need for resources, and know what they potentially need for development to help you guys be successful.
Yeah, it's a great thought. So again, thank you all for coming. A huge thank you to our speakers, Carmen and Jake, for being willing to share your expertise throughout years of experience, and to all of you for showing up today. I think that's really important. If you have other questions related to QuEST, send them to that odes.nifquality@maine.gov. Chelsea did drop the link to the artifacts in the chat earlier, but if you could drop it again, Chelsea, that would be great. It is easily searchable by Google as well. We'll post the recording, the slides, and other materials to the Rate Reform site very soon, and then we'll also distribute this by email. Would love to have your feedback on how we can make this coalition better and best meet your needs. This is about you guys. So please don't hesitate to share ideas if you have them. With that, I really thank you all for coming and have a great rest of your Wednesday.
Go Maine.